Bye, darling.
Bye.
Oh, I go back.
We are.
All right, well, I want to introduce
Bye.
Stacy Gallagher. Welcome. Stacy Gallagher is the director of our Children's Cove, an activity that does forensic evaluation and support of children that are sexually abused. Welcome.
Thank you.
How are you two kids?
Great. One sick, one not. I'm getting
Welcome
over.
to
Yeah, you
parenthood.
sound like you had something.
Oh, I'm on my fourth.
Yeah.
But I'm going to St. Martin this weekend.
Oh, yeah.
To where?
St. Martin. Get out of this.
How sweet it is.
Yeah, I'll probably turn
Ready
this
to get
body
out.
when you leave.
Huh?
What would be nice to hear when you leave.
Yeah.
Okay. How do you want to present?
So everything's probably pretty much the same as last year, with the exception of, if we're looking right at the budget itself, our miscellaneous contractual. And the only reason that has changed, the miscellaneous contractual, which is the $52.99, has changed because that is our marketing agency, and their rates have increased.
Is that Wendell Marketing?
That's Wendell. And that also supports Tamara Hillard's outside clinical supervision that she receives.
Is that $299 you're talking about?
$299. So that's increased because of Wendell's monthly has increased. Other than that, I don't see much of any other increase. The DSS, our hope again is DCF will come back with $65,000. I don't foresee any problems right now. I don't know if that's going to happen or not, but we won't know till very late if that's going to happen or not. And then I asked for a new initiative, which I'll explain. Katie Parton, who has always been our part-time family program assistant, I moved her into a full-time family program assistant slash family advocate. So more of her position being family advocate, she does about 7 hours of family program to supplement Brianna's position. The family advocate position is something that was a piece of accreditation that we were gigged on when they came. It was definitely needed. She's absolutely the right person for the job. National Children's Alliance in Washington. We're actually up for reaccreditation in 2 more years, so we'll be in a better place at that point. We received $10,000 from them because we're an accredited child advocacy center. Her position since April satisfies what they're looking for, basically. It's been really, really good for us. She is the person at the front door when families are coming in. She's sitting down with them. She's doing a needs assessment of everything around not only the issues that they're coming in for, but everything: housing needs, financial needs, anything, outside mental health referrals for the non-offending parents, any referrals or outside resources she can help with. She assists with the statewide victim compensation. Anything that she can do, she sits down and meets with the family while they're being seen for the forensic piece of the case. And then she is the point of contact for any of the case until the disposition of the case. So she really forms this relationship with the families that we didn't have before, because we just didn't have someone in that position. So at this point she does court support. She goes to court with the families if it's needed, and she follows up with the families on a weekly, monthly, and yearly basis. So we're really following the families a lot more than we did before, up until the disposition of the case. So that's her position now. The way it's funded right now is her family program piece has always been funded by the county. We have picked up the other piece, the family advocate piece, with 2 grants that we received, which is the Mass Children's Alliance, which is typically at least $20,000 a year, plus the National Children's Alliance $10,000 that we get. Any additional that we owe on that salary comes out of our Friends of fundraising efforts. So right now it's really most of her salary is supplemented through grants and fundraising. and I'm looking to have the county potentially pick up that piece of her salary. That's my new initiative.
Question on that, Stacy? The Mass Children's Alliance grant and the National Children's Alliance grant, will they continue to come in?
Yes, the National Children's Alliance will always get that 10,000 because we're accredited.
Right.
If anything ever comes back with federal funding on that, I don't foresee anything happening with that. The Mass Children's Alliance goes up and down. In 5 years that I've been here, they started at 40. They've dwindled down to 21.5 this year. It could go up to 25. We never know. So whatever that is, I always put in for at this point for Katie's salary. So that whole amount goes to Katie's salary at this
So
point.
what would, just, if the county funded the balance of her position, what would happen to the $31,000?
We get that funding. Ultimately, I would use, before Katie's position and before I was using that money, I used all of that money for our advertising. So Wendell Marketing is paid through the county, but any additional things, our radio ads, any other advertising comes, that's what I write that grant for. So it's typically Mass Children's Alliance and NCA have always been used for advertising until Katie's position came in, so I'll continue to do that.
Is our advertising treated as a PSA, or is it treated as
They're not,
commercial
they're
advertising?
yeah, commercial. We get PSAs if we do events through certain radio ads for nothing, obviously, but they're pretty expensive. I always wait until the radio ad sales, and it's usually buy one, get one. In November it comes out, and then I'll book those dates for the rest of the year. Right now I have them running all year long. I'm spending probably $8,000 opposed to our $30,000 to $50,000 that we typically spend on advertising.
For
because of
people
lack
who
of
are
funding.
watching, could you say what PSA means?
Oh, public
Public service.
We know what it is,
Sorry.
but...
Public service announcement. We typically only use those for events, our golf tournament, any other events that are going on in the community that are benefiting Children's Cove that other people are doing. That's what we use PSAs for. But our radio ads are truly our radio ads.
I don't see how much your revenue is here as far as fundraising efforts and that sort of thing.
Our fundraising is through a
Yeah.
501c3.
Right.
We typically don't carry in that account more than $100,000 in there. Right now, I don't have the balance of it right now. Our only big fundraising event that Children's Cove does is the golf tournament. We typically don't make more than $30,000 for that. It's getting harder and harder every year.
Right, 'cause everything's,
Yeah. It's just difficult to put together the 7 staff and try to build that up every year. I'm putting together with our new board development, which I'm trying to implement. We're trying to increase the golf committees and trying to have outside people do a lot more work than which they typically would do.
And how is that all expended? I mean, you know, I just don't see it in the mix here, so.
No,
it's just-
I don't include that in the mix. The majority of it is for, right now, it's for Katie's salary, we'll use that for it. Otherwise, it's the additional advertising for radio ads. Any cost of our April Sexual Assault Awareness Month, costs for our Pinwheel project, which you see over TD Bank North, that gets pretty expensive. Any other outreach and awareness activities that we do, that's what we use that account for.
Now, in part of the, let's say, qualifying for some of these federal grants, does Obamacare, in terms of the, especially the mental health support piece, has that facilitated any opportunity to access those kinds of funds? Because I know that when you make the referral over to DMH or to DMH clients, that they get a certain, say, a certain amount of funding that that supports that.
Right.
And I've asked this question in the past as to whether or not we should be getting, since we're part of the referral process, that we should be getting access to some of that kind of funding.
I haven't seen any grants for the Obamacare. We work with Mass Children's Alliance. They're always on the lookout for any grants that we are eligible for, and I always get them. I haven't seen any through that at all. It's tough. The mental health piece is really tough to get any grants for. There's not a lot of grants out there. The grants that are out there aren't really specific to who we provide services to.
Let's go back to the 501(c)(3)
Yep.
that you have as part of. One of the things that had come up at MMA, for example, was using the 501(c)(3) to be as a fundraising piece to find donors to specifically support activities that might be originating under government, but were seen as services that were supplied to both individuals and constituents. And down in New Bedford, for example, they were using this as a process to supplement, let's say, taxpayer funding, because they were able to show that the services that they were, that they were getting funds through this 501(c) were actually going to support individuals rather than being a transfer of taxpayer funds. And you may want to look at that. So did I talk to you about this? Maybe I didn't talk to you about this, but I think I gave you copies. I gave the other commissioners copies of what had come out of it. But the No Place for Hate Committee, for example, in the town of Barnstable, as well as the Human Service Committee in the town of Barnstable, are pursuing this as an opportunity to, let's say, to try to identify a funding source that would be independent of the money that would be appropriated based upon what comes out of say public sector money. So it seems to be something that is worthwhile to pursue.
Right.
If for no other reason that you might reduce your dependence upon a golf tournament that that's weather and interest dependent. Right. To let's say to getting to identifying a donor that maybe the Cape Cod Foundation. The Cape Cod Foundation might have identified a donor that is very interested in supporting a particular activity, and it just occurs to me that we have to be as creative as possible to identify what kinds of opportunities there are for revenue.
Yeah, and I think we're looking as much as we can with the resources that we have. If the world was a perfect place, I'd have a development person looking for grants all the time.
Well, the RDO is
I know.
supposed to be helpful with that.
We do use them for our grant activity, but again, it's very, because we do specifically child sexual abuse, a lot of the grants are for, they're not specific, we're too specific of a cause. So I find that the grants that we're going for as well want new initiatives. They want
They don't want operational
they
costs.
don't want and it's very difficult for the topic that we handle, and the things that we do are very specific. It's hard to just go out and create a program.
Right.
That's not something we're ever going to do.
Right, exactly.
So it's difficult to really, for example, United Way. They want new initiatives. It's not worth applying for that grant because they're not going to support our services.
And then you
so
get
we're
stuck with
losing
that
out.
service if it happens to work and it doesn't get funded again.
I can't
you
create,
just let it go.
and I can't create services and continue to pay for
Right.
them if they're not going to continue to support them.
Right.
So it's difficult to apply for those kind of grants when,
Again, I'm looking for donors.
I understand that, and we're always looking for donors. We get calls all the time for people, but it's not, the things that really are worthwhile for us, we were beneficiaries of other events. So Seaside Le Mans, $40,000 last year. We just did the Andrea Holden race, and we received money from them. So we're always seem to be out there to be beneficiaries of big events, and that seems to be what people are really looking to do.
Since you're on television, I think you ought to tell people a little bit about how, when we used to do the regular dog and pony shows, going to the towns and we'd say, this happens in your town, and they say, oh no, it doesn't happen here.
It happens here.
So we've got 15 towns.
Yep.
Sexual abuse happens to children, whether we like
We
to
do-
admit it or not.
Right, and we typically do about 200 cases a year.
Okay.
That's only, there's still about, they say 30 to 40% of kids are still not disclosing. So our numbers could be much higher. Our top three towns would be Barnstable, Yarmouth, and Falmouth. Right now, those have typically always been.
Which are the three most popular?
Larger
populous.
populations.
Right.
Yeah.
So, we're really trying to work with, we have great relationships with all of law enforcement, as well as state law enforcement. There's a bunch of new chiefs in, we've met with all of them. We don't have any problems with the partner agencies that we work with. We're doing continued outreach to schools, community agencies. We just did our first round with our training and outreach coordinator, training first responders meaning we've always trained law enforcement as first responders, but there's the population of EMS providers out there that they're typically the first responders to any acute assaults or anything like that. So we just did a bunch of trainings for EMS providers. They're typically the first on site a lot of the times. We're working with them really closely to be providing evidence bags on all of the rigs because they don't have those. So things like that, we're really seeing what their needs are. We've always looked at law enforcement as the first responders, which they are a lot of the times, but I think EMS, we're really the only ones training EMS in the whole state because they need that training. We're tapping into all of the schools right now, doing a lot of mandated reporting trainings, making sure that all of the teachers know that they need to report this properly if something happens. So there's a lot of training going on. We're trying to collaborate more with law enforcement to do more trainings with them. Cops like to hear from their own people, so we kind of try to collaborate with them. We're collaborating with law enforcement to do RAD Kids and RAD self-defense program. I don't remember the acronym, but it's basically self-defense. So it's self-defense for adults, and then they have self-defense for kids. And to put on that training is very expensive. So we have a couple of people trained, and we're doing that with other law enforcement agencies to kind of collaborate regionally with people on that respect.
Have you seen any uptick in reporting once you've finished a mandated reporting schedule with teachers?
We haven't tracked that. We've certainly tracked our radio ads. Our radio ads really see an increase. Typically, it's been about 40% increase after our radio ads have run. We've typically run them in a certain block of time, so it's easier to track. Right now, we're running them year-round, so it's a little more difficult. But we really focus in on radio ads. We have another one that we're producing right now to come out soon, around March, April, Sexual Assault Awareness Month. But typically, our numbers shoot up right now. Right now, it's slow. There's no real trend on that I've seen in how these cases occur. You know, we typically would say there's a lot of kids staying home right now with school out, and our numbers might increase that way, but we never know. We're working really closely and trying to get more contacts over on the islands. We're picking up radio stations over there, so there's more outreach to the islands.
Who pays for that?
It's the same as Friends Of, so all of the funding comes from advertising for the Friends Of account. And we're trying to find specific sites on Martha's Vineyard and Nantucket, so when we go over there to provide services, we're not going all over the island. So we're looking for DCF assistance to have a site that we can go to there to provide services at one site.
And what is, I know that when Children's Cove was first formed, there was a partnership and relationship with the district attorney's office.
Yeah.
There was in there. Does he provide anything? I mean, I know that you work with the DAs with these cases and that sort of thing, but where is...
Right now, Mr. O'Keefe's office provides $20,000 annually for our conference.
Okay.
Last year, it was... we never know. It's just like the DCF funding, whether we're going to get it or not.
Right.
So I typically say that we're planning the conference, and I have the conversation with him after.
I attended a little bit of that conference last year, and it's an agonizing conference, quite frankly, because you're talking about this subject matter that is really disturbing and painful. And then you hear, you know, the stories of children or as adults and that sort of thing. So, you know, I think you should have like a debriefing for counselors. It's really like this 2-day intensive focus on this issue.
Yeah.
And, you know, I was only there for an afternoon.
Most people there are doing the cases, though. They're doing the casework. So
and I did this work myself.
Yeah.
I mean, as a social worker, I did sexual trauma.
Yeah.
So, but it's been a while. It's very tough. It's a very tough subject.
Getting back to that part, I think that one of the issues that gets brought up is that if somebody comes in for a forensic evaluation, I think it's important for people to understand and hear that we do not dump people after they've gone through the forensic part.
Right.
That one of the things that we do is we stay with the
Right.
non-offending parent and the family to make sure that there's an appropriate liaison made with an ongoing therapeutic,
Yep. And that's a huge piece of what Katie Parton's doing right now with the Family Advocate. There was really that missing link between the family before and after the forensic interview came in. So right now, she's really making that connection and carrying that connection until the disposition of the case. Katie, for example, worked on a case this weekend. There was a gentleman who was bailed. In our opinion, should not have been bailed. It was a horrific sexual assault of his own daughter. And we followed that family through the weekend to see if we needed to get them emergency shelter because this guy was out on the street now and they were terrified. So situations like that where now we're carrying that case until the disposition of this guy's trial, and really following those kind of resources for the family. We're not only getting the child in for counseling, all of the kids we're getting into counseling for outside referrals, as well as the mother, looking at financial resources for them because now dad's out of the home, he was the breadwinner, those kind of things. And it's really important that we just don't dump them at the door. So we see them from the first Family Advocate piece. They're seen for the forensic interview. They're seen on site for mental health counseling. We have outside resources for when we refer them out, and then they're followed through the court process. So we're never just dumping them at the door. And I think the misconception about Children's Cove is we just provide mental health services. But I don't think people really know about the investigative piece that if a child is sexually abused, they're going to come to Children's Cove because we have that investigative piece. It's not just a counseling service. There's counseling services all over Cape Cod. We provide much more than that, and we follow the case throughout.
And then you mentioned during the court process, but the point I was trying to make was that even after the court process.
After the court process.
And indeed, if the court process is not part of it,
Yep.
at least there's an opportunity for, let's say, for support and following,
Right.
so that there is an opportunity for healing.
Yes.
That it's provided by.
We have many cases that don't even go to the court process, so we follow them with the clinical piece of it, the counseling. And Katie follows them for the Family Advocate piece, which is everything after, any other outside referrals. Getting kids into camps, getting them into other things that they need help with, those kind of things that really, I think they lose a lot of that when their family's torn apart. A lot of the time the breadwinner is taken out of the home because 90% of these offenders are in the homes.
It's a very courageous thing for a kid to come forward and speak of this. And there have been a couple of times when I've actually had a health unit as a substitute teacher and talked to some of the girls that were in class and told them that there were, if you came forward, there was continuing support. There was an opportunity to get your story out and be heard and supported, not only for the time that you told it, but time afterwards when you might be really concerned because you've exposed something that you've been very careful about. And that the process at Children's Cove is to make sure that when they're done, that they're not left in a place where they're exposed or even more vulnerable than they were at the beginning.
And I think our awareness campaign has a huge piece in that. I'm a really big advocate for getting the word out that there is support out there and that someone can tell about this. And that's why I think I put so much time and energy into the awareness piece. The radio ads are really empowering, not just the adults, but kids to come forward and talk about it. I can tell you that every time Beth goes out and does trainings, there's always disclosures coming out to her because at that time someone's talking about it and they want to disclose to somebody. The radio ad that we're producing now talks about 40% of these kids that are having these conversations of someone are peer-to-peer. So they're telling friends, it's just not going anywhere from there. So they want to tell somebody, it's just they don't know how to.
Well, I think this is a point to suggest that among the other programs that we have in the county, for example, the support we give to suicide prevention, that this piece is also important, that once somebody hears this, the advice they should give to their friend is that there is professional support available, and that if it's a matter of sexual abuse, the Children's Cove, but don't overlook the opportunity to go to some type of a professional source for support, and the person that is receiving the information should be encouraged not to keep it to themselves and not to feel as though they're responsible for solving it as much as they should come forward and talk to somebody that they trust who is in a professional capacity, who might be able to give them some kind of advice that, you know, that would help them to avoid bearing the whole burden of that information by themselves.
We're working on another initiative too, and I'm sure Sheila knows this. There's not a lot of trauma-based therapists on Cape Cod. We're very specialized in the work that we do, the clinical piece. So we've done this before. We send surveys out to all the providers in the community, wanting to get information back if they do specifically train on trauma, because we don't know them all. And if they're not, making contact with them and actually getting them trained in trauma, because we have one therapist seeing 200 kids a year, that it just doesn't work. So we're trying to really get the community-based therapists either trained or finding out if they're trained in trauma counseling. So
maybe that's a place to look for a donor to give us a grant to go forward.
To do it, yeah.
Yeah, because that would increase your spread and leverage support in the community.
When we're trying to locate them at this point,
Yeah.
but there's just not a lot of trauma-based counselors.
Lots of luck. There's what, 1-2 psychiatrists on Cape Cod now?
I know, not a lot of child services.
No, there's not.
Can you just describe a
Never
little
is.
bit about what a trauma specialist would do? I mean, I know not exactly would do, but are we talking mental trauma, physical trauma, both?
Well, they're talking about, it depends. We do severe physical abuse as well, but most of the therapists that aren't doing trauma-based counseling are doing general mental health assistance with the child. Ours specifically focuses in on the trauma that happened. So whatever the sexual abuse was, really trying to get at that. And people that aren't trauma trained are not going to do that, and if they do it, odds are they're not going to do it appropriately. So it's important that when they're having counseling, that they focus in on the trauma. And when we do that, sometimes it's very short term at Children's Cove. Sometimes they need very long-term trauma-based counseling, and there's not a lot of trauma-based on the Cape. So we sometimes hang on to some of the clients that really need the long-term trauma-based help.
And I think another issue here, especially for accessing professional support, is the so-called waiting lists that agencies have, and that I believe that you do not. The opportunity for being seen relatively immediately is present with at Children's Cove, and not if in some of the other agencies. So I think that's an important issue.
And the only reason we do that is because we do refer out. We have to refer out, or we would have a waiting list like every other agency on the Cape. We talked about that yesterday. If we have to go on a waiting list, we will, but let's do everything to avoid that. But it's really the only way to do that is to refer them to really good trauma-based counselors that we're just not finding.
And a lot of times when you're dealing with kids, you really have to sort of establish that trust. You don't go right into the meat of things, because that's an embarrassing. Kids are very resilient. They can come in from something like this, and they're in this environment, and all of a sudden there's a lot of activity around them. So they're sort of kind of happy with that, especially if they're not getting that type of attention at home. And so you have to sort of work with that, and it takes a little time, but it is that trust. And then when you least expect it, boom, it just kind of comes out there of what happened. And it's not the first day, and it's not the second. It's during the process of
the development of the therapeutic.
Of the therapeutic, yes, exactly. But it's
well, anyway,
it's tough stuff.
This was, and I wanted to use this opportunity to let people know a little bit more about what I call the nuts and bolts of of what you're doing over there. And the most important statistic for people to be aware of is that 200 cases a year. And my recollection is that that's not something that is a low number, but it actually shows an escalation in the amount of reports that are going on. And of course, it is all part of a whole bunch of other issues that that are part of it to make this place. Make it quite a safe place for children.
So, if I can just say one thing before Stacy leaves, if somebody is in trauma, if there is somebody needs help, where do they call, or where do they access?
They can call Children's Cove. What I don't want people to do is to think that they can call Children's Cove and get an appointment. We take referrals from law enforcement and/or Department of Children and Families. They can call either one of those, or call Children's Cove to get to find out where they should go, where they should call first.
Before they go to you, because you're not the first stop. You're
give them the
brought in if
information.
they feel that there's
Right, and
trauma.
a lot of families are hesitant to go to DCF or law enforcement, so certainly if it's the first call we have to make is to Children's Cove, that's fine. We have the relationships with both of those agencies where we can make calls ahead to let them know this person's calling.
Are you connected with 211?
We are in 211.
All right, so that would be
Yep.
the easiest thing for people to remember.
Yep.
Right.
Is
Yep.
go to 211.
Our
and get a
website's
report.
childrenscove.org.
Right.
Thank you, nice help.
Thank you.
Great.
Nope. You done? Okay, thank you.
Hopefully you received our invitations to legislative
I
luncheon.
have that, and I have it in my
Yes.
report.
Yes, we'll be there. I have it.
Board,
Yes.
what do you want to do?
You're the person on the board this year, or is it me? Who did we appoint? I think it was me. Was it?
It was you.
It
Oh,
was
was
me.
you? Okay.
Yeah.
You? I guess
Okay.
it's you.
All right.
I mean, I don't remember.
Okay.
No, it is Sheila.
It
All
is
right.
Sheila, yeah.
No.
So
Okay.
I'll get an email out to you for the next one.
Please.
It's in March.
What is it so much? Make sure you do. So the Comcast number, that's the one
I
we
have
look
that
at the
one, I
most.
do.
Okay, I think you
Our
do.
service
I
will-
didn't know you had another one. You have a
It's
secret
It's my
email.
personal, no, but you know, I gotta go over to, I can get into my Barnstable County.
Yeah, give that out and start using it.
Okay.
That way you'll save
I give
yourself
my,
a lot
I
of
give my,
stuff.
I give my
Thank you
personal
very
email,
much,
it's on,
yeah.
I even put it on my card, I didn't put the Barnstable County because that's the one review,
Well,
the.
we're back?
Yes, we are.
Okay. All right, thank you very much. We're back, and we're going to now cover the administration.
Okay. I have a couple things I'm going to hand out. Most of these are the county administrators, so I am not able to speak at great depth on them. But what I'm handing you is a memo from Barnstable, our county council, just came in late last night.
night, I read it.
So I would read it, and then I can have, for your next meeting, be able to better report on the status of the county clerk and, as Bill has asked, assistant county clerk. So
Okay, I would suggest that we put this under advisement and bring it up at the next meeting.
So I will make sure that we discuss.
And I would
how-
direct, our administrator to give a report on this and make a recommendation.
Perfect, thank you. I'm just,
Are you in agreement with that?
Yes.
And,
reminder, today there is a public hearing on County Ordinance 1024 and 1025 this afternoon at 3 o'clock at the Assembly, and the Assembly is meeting today. Just a quick note, the new clerk will not be sworn in. Ron actually very graciously thought to call her and tell her not to try and attempt to get here for a 4 o'clock meeting due to the weather. So she, her start date and everything is still set, but she will now be sworn in at the second meeting of the
Okay.
Assembly. So that was Ron's decision, his prerogative as Speaker. I'm going to...
Oh, did they meet with her?
Yeah, well, they hired her.
They
Yes,
hired her.
They've interviewed her, yes, but not the entire Assembly.
Okay, well, it is the speaker's prerogative to hire her.
No, it is the commissioners do the hiring.
No,
They just
excuse me.
selected her.
It was for availing himself of the recruiting part. The speaker could do that on his own. He chose to include other members of the assembly
Correct.
in that process.
Correct.
So she doesn't go before the assembly? She does go before the assembly?
She will be sworn in, that's a quirk of the charter. She is sworn in by the full board of the delegates. That will not happen until their second meeting in February.
Okay.
Instead of
we will hire her too.
We had hired.
That's
her.
right, that's what
That's what we
that
did
letter
last
was.
week.
We did that last week.
Right.
Yeah, we authorized that.
Yep.
Okay.
And FYI, I'm just passing out, Mark and I met with the Cape delegation on 2 weeks ago, Thursday
Thursday.
now. And just for FYI, that was what was handed out to them. We gave them the informational packets on Barnstable County government. We went over, the second page shows the funding requests that are out there that we reviewed with them, talked quite a bit, and there was great interest in CMed. Also gave an overview of the Cape and Vineyard Electric Cooperative, and then just briefly just updated them on what had happened with pension reform. So this is an FYI in case it gets brought up to you. This is what was handed out
Right.
to them at
Thank
the
you.
meeting that Mark and I had. I'll review Mark's report so that you don't get far behind.
Okay.
I hand out his material. Here's a copy of
His
his report for
activities.
each of you. And basically what's in it, summary. He gives you a highlight of the MMA conference materials. I will hand them out. There's a couple that he felt
Is there another couple?
were relevant for you to look at, to read through here. So I'll hand them to you. Please look at them at your leisure. If you want copies, you can take copies or recycle them, because Mark has his own set of information. So
Okay.
you have a summary of the municipal related acts from 2010, law memos on various topics, a article on payment in lieu of taxes, update on selected cases for municipal law, as well as attorney-client privilege. Lots of updates. As we know, MMA
Right.
provides several workshops on all of those subject matters. Stacy mentioned it, but you should also have received an invitation to the Children's Cove Legislative Lunch on March 18th at noon, from noon to 2 at Children's Cove. I am going to hand out for you.
So it says here that our bill for health insurance is going to go up 10%.
Could you let me get there? I'm coming. So I'm handing out to you a copy of the proposed revenues. This is an operating capital budget for next week, 2 pages. Each take 1 copy.
Okay, excuse me, so give me the page back that belongs to
Okay,
me.
there's one.
Okay, thank you. There's the other.
Do you have a staple in here, so?
Here, this is for you, Bill, and then I'll take that, okay.
So this is for you for your budget discussions for next week.
We still have to review IT, as I
Yep,
recall.
yes, we
Yes.
still have a couple to make up from the Wednesday, Thursday, and
Okay,
weekly snow
again, I
snows.
would
This is-
propose that
This is
if,
what you just gave me, so, okay.
in your
It's an extra
conversation with
copy.
Mark, if he feels as though we need an extra day to review
Yep.
budgets,
I'll
I'll
ask
be
him.
open for that.
I would keep all of your Wednesdays open for the entirety, and I will ask Mark to send you an email.
I just want to say
But
right
I'll
now,
remind, you may not know this, but on February 16th, I already told him that I have a budget, or let's say the beginning of a budget analysis over at the RTA, and we have a meeting in the morning, and under the old schedule, the present schedule, we were going to meet in the afternoon on the 16th, so I still have that, I still have that responsibility.
and I would like to just state that on the 23rd, I would have to leave here at 11:30. I have a meeting with Speaker DeLeo.
2:16 in the
Good.
afternoon, and 2:23.
2:23, I would
You
have
wanna
to
have
leave
it
at
AM.
11:30, so I'd have to be either AM or we'd make that another, if it's, all of this is jumbling too much between Bill's schedule and mine.
And
You
AM.
have to think of an extra day.
Okay, all right, so I'll let Mark know, and then he can put the schedule together and
Okay.
work with you.
So I'm,
Now, Bill, to get to your issue, attached, the Cape Cod Municipal Health Group rates, we voted last Wednesday. There is a 9.6% increase in health insurance coverage for all employees that participate in the Cape Cod Municipal Health Group. And I have just handed out to you what the impact will be on the different plans for our county employees. So there is open enrollment that will be held in the spring, which spring around here about April, maybe May. Open enrollment will be for all employees and retirees. If anyone wishing to switch plans, will be in April.
Can I ask a couple questions about, is the sheriff still part of the Cape
No.
Cod? No, he
No.
went to the state,
Mhm.
okay.
right,
But he was part of the municipal
Correct.
health group.
right.
Are the rates determined by any kind of claims experience, or is it the same across the board for everybody?
Rates, because we're self-funded, we set our rates based on, we establish our rates based on what anticipated claims to be for the upcoming year, and that is based on past experience
For the whole group?
for the whole group.
It doesn't change with
No,
each
it's not-
individual
no.
member of the group?
It's
Okay.
a unit wide.
Thanks.
How many
Just wanted
people are
to-
still on so-called master medical?
We do offer that per month.
So we're
Barnstable
we're
County
shut of
does
that.
not offer any indemnity plans
All right, so
for active or retirees.
that's the master medical.
Yep,
Okay, and then Master Health Plus, is that also Blue Cross Blue Shield?
correct, but we don't offer that.
Okay, and so.
We only offer if you look down, what
Frozen
are called
ones.
the legacy plans and the rate saver plans.
Okay, so Blue Care Elect Preferred.
Yep.
Okay, is that where the majority of our employees
Employees
are?
are.
Okay, I would presume that I'm on that as well.
So, there you go. So if you look to the middle slice, you can see.
And that says the 10% increase, which reflects what the increase would be, so the impact is reflected here.
So the increases are different
Correct.
for the different plans?
Correct.
like
It's not a
Harvard.
9.6% increase. If you notice the indemnity plans, which are the costlier plans, their increase is 13%. So for those
But we don't offer
entities, no, we don't offer those, but for those entities that do, they're looking at an employee and employer would be looking at a 13% increase.
And then the supplement, the Medicare supplement have a lower increase.
Okay.
So
And the
that's-
employees are all, now since this tends to be an area of very great importance to our employees, will there be a session for them to explain this to them?
That's open enrollment, Bill.
Okay, and that will be in April.
Yes, and it's an all-day event. All of the providers are here. Our staff are here, and it's your opportunity to ask questions on the different programs, plan, what's covered, what's not covered, based on individual circumstances.
Okay, and then as an addition to that, I guess they also explained what the net effect is in terms of what, I mean, when does it take place? The change in rates take place on July 1st, right?
Yes, but because we prepay, it actually comes out of your June paycheck.
Okay.
So it goes out.
So that's another thing that people need to know for planning, as to when this increase would take effect.
I think everybody pretty much knows that. Because they know they pay a month in advance.
Which brings up another issue I'm sorry, Kat. But there was the other issue of coverage when, on hires. Remember we had asked you to look into that? Because right now we have a 90-day, there's a 90-day
Oh, yeah, I asked
period.
her about the waiting period, yes, we do have a waiting
Yes, we do.
period.
Okay.
I have a question about Section 18. Have many of the members, the towns in the group adopted 18 or no? Or actually maybe not have adopted it, but have implemented it anyway?
There are
Section 18 is
52
where retirees, when you reach the age of 65 and you're retired, you're required to enroll in Medicare Part B. If you pass Section 18, which is the general law of the Commonwealth, then you are required to enroll. Otherwise, if you haven't adopted 18, there are other plans that you can be in. And what happens is that the towns pay the original 80% instead of Medicare. So it's a huge cost savings to the towns.
The answer is not all of the units have adopted that. I'd have to get back to you, Pat.
Oh,
I don't know off the top of my head, but not all of the units have adopted these. It's more and more continue. Barnstable County, Sandwich were early adopters as part of Cape Cod Municipal Health Group, Town Sandwich, Barnstable County. But not everyone has adopted it, but more and more continue because that is the way we're going, especially in light of the governor's announcement.
Yeah.
Right.
And in the governor's announcement, there was some concern that a lot of us had about losing our present coverage and having it replaced. And I believe is the organization that we belong to putting together a proposal to support our continuing the way we are.
Okay, and then there is just for your information reading, also a copy of a letter to Dan Gallagher from Mark, so I'll leave that with you.
Okay, on Dan Gallagher, I think that we're all interested in having him come in to make a report.
After budgets or as part of your budgets? When I
Well, he's not
just
on
gave
the
you very
budget.
shortened schedule, so
Okay.
when do you want him to come in march or sooner?
I think that we've already asked for him, so after the budget process is over, we do need to talk to him, because that's supposed to be a big job.
Okay, I will remind Mark in March.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think if he could come, when he does come, if he could talk about the impacts of Open Cape on job creation
Yes.
for Cape Cod, I think that would be a really good discussion for us to have. Because we say that it's going to create jobs, but exactly what, when, where, how?
Yeah. And the related issue is, given the amount of money that he's administering and the size of the staff that he has, there's some concern that I have is that the administration of a large chunk of money like that and its implementation, he may, I'd like to, have a better explanation as to how the size of the staff can support the management of the funds that he has.
Okay, I will do. I have just two other items. I was curious, I had an email here from a Chris Pewicki on Sligo Green. He's holding a forum Thursday night at the Upper Cape Tech, and he indicates that he has invited the county commissioners to participate in this forum, and I'm not aware of, nor was Mark, of any of us receiving an invitation.
I did not get an
I don't
invitation.
recall.
That, unless it's on my Barnstable
I might have,
Committee
I
thing
think
and
I
didn't
might
see it.
have, I might have
You would have
seen
typed
an
off, right?
invitation, but I don't remember an invitation to be part of a panel or participate.
Right, you might have received you're saying you might have received the notice about
Yeah.
the meeting, but not an
Right.
email.
Not
Okay.
that I'm aware of.
I just wanted to make sure.
When is it going to be?
It's Thursday night, staff will be there, so if it comes up as
This
to your...
Thursday night?
This Thursday,
Where
tomorrow.
is it going to be?
Tomorrow.
It is tomorrow night at the Upper Cape Tech School in Bourne at 6:30.
When is the storm going to be over?
Who knows?
2012. But anyway, if it asks, I'll just, if it comes up, I'll just say that.
What is the topic?
The panel to address energy efficiency programs, restructuring impacts on contractors and customers. And why I brought this up is because if you had been invited, I would have respectfully asked that you defer to the chairman of the Cape Light Compact, because how this is being set up, that you would be asked to comment on the day-to-day operations and things that you have no involvement in. So, but I
Good
just...
point, because I was interviewed by a reporter yesterday on the phone about the day-to-day operations of the wastewater collaborative, and I referred him to Andy Gottlieb to be a more appropriate place to get those answers, as well as Larry Ballantyne as the chair
Right.
of the wastewater collaborative. We do have people that we have in place to perform these duties, and as I said to him, although the commissioners are kept advised in an overview way of what the activities are, we wouldn't be able to respond to the day-to-day kinds of
That's
things.
the nature of this conversation. Okay, that's great. If it comes up, it may not come up. I'll just let Margaret know that nobody received an invitation, that the panelists...
I do recall an invitation, a notice that the meeting was going on.
Well, there's a difference between the notice that goes out to a blank
Right.
email,
I get
but this
that.
says specifically that the Barnstable County Commissioners have been invited. Professionally, you don't invite a county elected official by sending a general notice out about a meeting. That's a little odd. I had thought that you would have been contacted. And
I
Would
have
confirm.
not. I have not. I'll go through my emails when I
Okay.
go home just to make sure
If
that
let me
I'm
know
not
if I'm
mistaken.
wrong.
but-
Again, it may be a mood issue, but I just wanted to make sure staff was prepared in case it came up.
And can I just ask, would it have come from Chris? Because usually it comes from, okay, so would it come from that, that would have been the heading.
And then the last issue I wanted to bring up with you, you touched on it this morning briefly. Paul Seeloff called me yesterday and asked about the building inspector and whether or not we were going to be moving forward with that. And what I told Paul, I said, I am not involved in these discussions, Paul, so I can't, to date, I can't necessarily have a fully intelligent conversation on this issue. But I did tell him what the process would be. They said, if we're going forward, the process is to establish a job description, to rate and rank them, and then for the town of Whalefleet to say, we are looking to purchase X number of hours of a building inspector. And the question is, if he's only going, and his needs are, I believe, are part-time. I don't have a specific hourly amount. We have to get that from him. And then he is, just like we've done in the past, he pays 100% of the cost of the actual employee. So, which includes benefits, health insurance, retirement, so it is a complete contract. So there's no cost savings there, is what I'm saying.
Okay.
And
However,
Can I-
if
may I-
he were to, let's say, engage this opportunity to discover if there were other communities that were willing to show an interest in this, I think that would, that should be included in his request. Issue.
This came up when I happened to be over at the commission. He came in to meet with Paul and Patty Daly. So I came in since he was from Whalefleet. And his situation is his building inspector is now gone. And Paul is really into the regional thing. If we can share these types of resources, we're better off for it. So he came to the commission to see, would they be interested in having this partnership? How could we incorporate maybe a building inspector? The commission, it appealed to them because in many of their endeavors going in on these projects, to have a building inspector on site is helpful for them because that gives them feedback as to the project they're reviewing and that sort of thing. Also, it would be beneficial. So he did say at the time that Eastham and I think it was Dennis was interested in a building in their, they can see in the near future their time is coming to an end with their building inspector. So they're interested in this now. Where they are on that, I'm not sure. But the discussion went something like, I would put up, I'd be willing to put like $50,000 towards this if you could do the other part and take it on.
Who's paying that?
This was just the discussion
50,000
between,
from
he would pay $50,000 if we could do like a pilot program for 2 years where the county does the other portion of that salary.
The 50,000 is coming from where?
Wellfleet's, that would be his, he would
Wellfleet
pay.
would put 50,000?
He would pay, okay.
Okay.
So the commission at first thought that maybe we could do this with them as a pilot and lend it out to, as a regional person and see if there was that. They didn't have it in this year's budget. I didn't know, I thought it was coming towards the end of our budget. I think it would be good to have Paul Seeloff come before us with Patty and Paul, just to sort of redo that discussion in front of us so you'll know exactly where the thinking was. This, he's sort of under a time because his building inspector is gone. I have said to him, look, I don't think we're going to be able to do it in this budget, but it's something to discuss now for next year. And I think that what he could do is contract with a building inspector until I think he'd be willing to keep that position, to not fill it if there was a possibility. So I think before he goes much further into contracting with someone on a contractual hourly basis, it might be just good to have this discussion so that this is a regional opportunity. I think that it's something you need to hear more, in all of the detail so that we can consider it or say we're not ready for that yet.
Let me just, the conversation that I had.
Is Mark involved in this?
No, Paul called me yesterday, and Paul has a need this fiscal year.
Right.
And
Paul Seeloff.
Paul Seeloff, too many people. Paul Seeloff has a need for a building inspector position this fiscal year. And the question is, the question he asked me, are we interested in hiring a full-time building inspector now? And he would avail himself to half of those services. And what I articulated to Paul is that it's a two-pronged, it's a county commissioner decision, but most importantly, it's a budget decision. Right. Because if we have not appropriated the funds for the other half of the position, all we would be advertising and hiring for is a half-time position, which may not then be enough to include benefits, which makes it very unattractive. But his need, Sheila, is now. I know, but I think that it can be worked with. But I still think it's worth a discussion because these are the types of services that towns are looking at, and what would we need to be done.
But we have a very basic decision to make here as well, as to whether or not, if we go in this direction of having regional building inspector services, whether it's done on a contractual basis by the county or whether these individuals actually become county employees.
You have to have them to be, let's go back, take a step for that, because they put aside what it is. If they are under the direction and supervision of the county, they're using
I understand the IRS
right.
code.
So there's a niche difference between that. And to date, when we have done this very same thing, just pick different subject matter,
I know.
They have been employees of Barnstable County.
Right, but they wouldn't have to be. There would be a way to do it.
But let me finish. And they have been employees of Barnstable County, and there has been a memorandum of understanding and a contractual obligation between the county and the town to fund those positions so that the county was made whole. Right. So that's one option. The other option, and I do not think you could do this contractually because they're employees of the town even, because you're giving them day-to-day direction. I mean, it's a fine line of having your building inspector be a contractual position.
Right.
So,
okay,
but that requires.
Wait a minute. I'm just doing it. But I think there is a way to do it. There really is a way to do it on a contractual basis because of the nature of the work. It's pretty, Well, anyway, that's a discussion we need to have.
Yeah, so let's ask.
Would it meet the IRS code if it were contractual?
Let's
And
ask
if so,
him, and ask-
how could it be
And that's
done?
Patty Daly.
And if we have to employ people, that's a huge commitment on our part in providing regional services.
But it would only be done, see, the fact, this is how this
Yeah, I know,
works.
I
They all pay us.
I know, I'm just talking about having more employees. That's a huge cost to the county, so we have to really
Okay, so
think
we have
about
to be
that.
careful about adding.
Okay.
So we need to
headcount.
have,
We have to know that who's gonna use
In your
it and how much
opinion-
they're gonna pay for it.
Who, in your opinion, should this IRS or this contractual?
That's a labor lawyer, that goes
No,
to
that's-
council
yeah,
for a
that's,
resolution.
yeah.
I-
There are, the
No, there seem to be
IRS
two pieces
code,
to this. One is to whether or not we want to pursue the support of this idea, one, and two.
no,
what
we
is the
want to
process.
pursue
We
the
do
support
want
of
to
this
support it.
idea.
We do.
The question is how.
Okay, how?
Right, and that's,
So who do we
why.
have, excuse me, Sharon.
Okay.
Okay. With whom do we have the discussion of the how?
I think the first person to talk to is to get
Paul
Mark or
Seeloff.
Maggie and Paul Seeloff in here with one of
Yeah,
us
and,
Okay.
and sit down
Then make
and
it so.
develop
Right.
a very
Exactly.
basic,
Okay, we'll do that.
have a basic look-see at how this could work. And if it could work in one town, then you could apply it to other towns as well.
All right.
But there's some really basic organizational
Yes.
things that have to be
Okay,
really
so you'll make it
decided
so
and cost
and
factors
arrange, you'll
involved.
arrange for him to come?
Yep, I will talk to him.
All right. Will that?
Yeah,
Okay, great.
that's good. I'd be happy to work on that
okay.
with you, you know, to sit in on that.
Well, I'm gonna
yeah,
have
well,
him
I'm he's gonna
commissioner.
come here to the
Huh?
commissioners
Have him come
meeting. I
to
want him to
your
come
meeting.
here and talk about it
Yeah.
first. And,
But we need to have, okay.
yeah, I mean, just
But
to
there's
get
a-
the idea.
But on the,
But we
on
need
the other part-
information on the other part.
Right, and perhaps you could be our, you could represent us in that and give us a report separately on that, because I think what he's going to come in the general meeting is give a general description of his need, what he, you know, what his thoughts are, what he's, you know, what he's willing to provide. And I think that what you can help us with is the how to do that.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
we
yeah.
understand the same
Right.
things.
Okay,
That was the end of my reporting, so
okay, one other thing before we get to that. I've been approached.
Really,
March is Consumer Protection Month. We've been asked
We're back
to,
on.
You know, we've been asked to give it some recognition. I've asked Mark to come up with some type of a proclamation for us to sign. They were supposed to get back to me on Monday, because I invited him to find out through the local offices who could give something, you know, could speak to it, both on my television program and also to come in to talk to us about it. I contacted Paul Schrader, who I thought was a local rep, but he's retired, but it's a different organization. It's different, you know, like who knew? You have consumer protection, then you have what he does, which is something a little bit different, which is more, if you get, like, it's sort of like a Better Business Bureau type of thing. And I remember I went to him on a problem that I had on a piece of stuff, what was different from consumer protection. But in any case, I just want to let you make, and I think we all went to, we all went to that session on Saturday, and I think it's 11:30 and Beth is here, so.
Mr. Chairman, pause for a tape change.
Sure.
Thank you.